Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the 13th Fleet After Action Report. I am very glad you are joining us today, and I will also say that Admiral Tater's Ship Shop is glad that you're joining us as well. They are our official sponsor. If you want some of the absolute best accessories for Armada that you can get, go to the website, check it out. There is a lot of great stuff there. You may have seen it in a lot of tournaments that have been going on. He does a lot of prize support for them, so definitely check that out. Now, you will also notice that I currently do not have my green screen behind me because, well, it was a bit of a rush start for tonight's show. I've had a lot going on at the house, and I apologize for the schedule that we've been keeping here lately. I've missed a lot of streams, and I still don't have the last edition of Thursday Night Armada up, which was not from this past Thursday, but from the Thursday before that. It's just been kind of wacky, and we're moving into the holiday season, so I want to let you guys know that it is going to continue to be wacky. But I'm going to do my best to get you a lot of shows in here. If we don't do it, I'm going to let you know on Facebook and on Discord, so definitely keep up with that. Speaking of things that are not going to be with us tonight, we are missing, of course, Admiral Tater himself. Garrett could not make it tonight, which is sad because, talking Ordnance, I think he would be really good at that. But we do have a couple of other really great people to talk about Ordnance. I am not one of them. We got Nick with us tonight.
Hey, everybody.
And we have Reuben with us tonight.
How y'all doing?
So, yeah, and it might help if I transition so that everybody will see you on screen and we can start talking about what we've got going on here. We had really expected tonight to be talking about the new updates that they were going to put to the game, which I think they said was going to come out in October, correct?
Those are the initial. I don't know if they ever got a definitive answer. I think people were saying they were expecting them in October.
Okay, I wasn't sure if
I think the whole story is that Garrett and Ken from Ion Radio were at Gen Con, and they talked to Will Schick, ex-lead designer. Well, technically still lead designer, I guess, sort of. And he mentioned in passing that there was one final update that AMG wanted to do with the game, and it should be out in October. And then, of course, that populated YouTube and everywhere else. And then
so it became unofficially official.
Yeah, and AMG, they're never good at really talking to anybody on their socials unless it's painting.
Okay.
So we never got an actual, hey, like AMG transmission, we're going to give you stuff. It'll be in October. So who knows where it is or when it is or what it is.
All right. Well, we will be anxiously awaiting that, and we will definitely be talking about that when it drops. So, outside of that, though, we do have some other things that we can discuss, and we've really enjoyed talking about the upgrade cards and the different things that we have available there. So, I figured tonight would be a good night to go ahead and continue on that path, and unfortunately, because of the weird way that my schedule went, I wanted to go with one of the smaller upgrade sets, which leads us to our Ordnance. I'm going to be perfectly honest with everybody watching that I do not like playing that close up. So a lot of this, I'm going to lean on Reuben and Nick, and then after they tell me what they think, I will digest what they've said and tell you which one I agree with.
Oh, we're doing real spicy here.
Oh, yeah.
Debate format. Okay.
Let me get my red tie. Hang on.
So, Nick, I'm going to let you go ahead and take the lead on this.
Sure, yeah. So I've got the list in front of me. So I thought we can go through this alphabetically.
Okay.
And then just kind of work our way through it, placing them. I have a kind of a loose tier list. But what I really want to talk about, because with these upgrades, kind of like we've had in previous episodes of this, is the context is always hard to pin down. You can never just take two upgrades in a vacuum and compare them like point wise, because there are so many other factors. So our tier list, I think, is going to be kind of. I feel like, especially for Ordnance, there are some clear winners, and then everything else is kind of just in a pile. Um, so let's see if we can make some sense out of the out of a ranking system here. Now let's go ahead. Are we ready to start about this, Chris?
Oh yeah, I've got all the graphics here ready to go.
Okay, let's go ahead and start with assault concussion missiles. ACM,
and I lied. That was the one that I did not have ready.
Well,
but we'll get it ready. You can go ahead and talk.
I'll fill some time then. So what are we calling a C tier card when it comes to Ordnance? Where do you want to put that so that we're on the same page, Nick?
I'm thinking a C tier card.
In what context do you use a C tier Ordnance card?
A C tier Ordnance card is
what's an average Ordnance card?
Oh my god! See, this is what it's hard, right? Because there's like three of like the bottom tier Ordnance cards are all completely different in how they work. So like, what's an average Ordnance card? I would say an average is something that you're not losing points on necessarily. You're going to get a use out of it, which means it's not. You're never going to be in a situation where it's completely useless. Meaning that if your opponent has no squadrons, an upgrade that only works on squadrons will not be useful in that game at all, right? So you're losing out in points completely. But there are other upgrades that you're going to use every turn, right? Those I think are going to be like your A. Like if we had to put an A or an S rank in this, it's going to be a card that is useful all the time, and you miss not having it when you don't take it. Okay. So for C,
what's the difference between S and A?
I guess let me answer your question with another question. What do you think about Ordnance pods?
I think Ordnance pods are probably the most niche upgrade that you can have on the ship's upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
Because of their limited range, and because of the way that Black Dice and Ordnance ships function. They need layers of rerolls or other iterative benefits to really maximize the dice. Gone are the days where Ordnance experts would reroll everything, so now you need like some math and a couple of upgrades to really get Ordnance ships to shine. But the biggest thing that affects Ordnance in general has nothing to do with the slot itself and has everything to do with PDIC. Mm-hmm. And we'll definitely cover that on why certain cards were very good and now are no longer at the top of S tier.
Exactly.
Because of what's changed in the environment around them. Right. I think that really it's more about the ships, because there are very few ships that have the right combination of dice pools, weapons teams, ordnance slots, and speed to be a good close-range brawling ship in the current meta that we experience.
Sure. I mean, that's kind of like what we discussed just before we came on, is that, you know, part of the reason why I can't talk very much on Ordnance is that I like staying at range. And, you know, you talked about how great it is to get that one shot off, but my feeling is, you know how great it is to make sure you don't get that one shot off?
You know? Mm-hmm. And that's why Ordnance weapons have to have, they're so combo reliant. It's because you're only going to get one or two shots in a game with them. So if you're going to use Ordnance and weapons teams in these ships, they have to be absolutely devastating when they go off, because they're only going to shoot twice.
Yeah. So do we feel like we have a pretty good concrete idea of what a C tier is then?
I have no clue.
I'll defend my positions on lower than C, and we'll start there.
Yeah. So do we want to
Let,
hash
let's
out where ordnance?
let's
Start
just
back with assault
let's start
concussion.
talking about these, and then we can say what tier we feel like they're in after we've discussed the pros and cons, and then see where we end up there.
Sure. So assault concussion missiles. It's one of my favorite black dice upgrades because it is just more damage, and I love seeing cards that just say extra damage, right? So what it does is a exhaustible black crit effect. You exhaust this card. Each hull zone adjacent to the defending hull zone suffers 1 damage. So the way that looks is you would resolve your attack, roll your dice, do any of your while attacking. They would then spend their defense tokens, and then when you get to the actual resolve damage effects, they will resolve things like brace tokens and redirect tokens, and then you resolve crit effects. So if they redirect to a shield, and that shield goes down to 0, so say you're attacking one hull zone that has 2, another hull zone that has 2, and they redirect and both go to 0, they're going to suffer 2 hull damage because each one of those hulls is going to take 1 damage, and that third hull will also take an additional damage if it still has shields. If not, it might be a third damage card. So I mean, imagine hitting a ship with like very few shields left, and really just laying like 3 damage cards plus the remaining damage that you have to deal. Because it's exhaustible, this means you can only use it once, so it makes it less desirable on those double arcing ships, right? MC-75s, your Providences, stuff like that. But it's still a heavy hitting card. Sitting at 5 points, this card came out with the core set of Armada.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, anytime you can do extra damage without throwing more dice is good. I can't argue with that.
Yep. And
So
the reason, so the counterpoint to this card is that because it's a crit effect card, if you're depending on the size of your ship, you need to worry about 2 things: evade tokens and point defense ion cannons. Because an evade token now works at close range. So if you're a large base ship and you're shooting in a small base ship and you only have 1 crit in the pool, they just re-roll your hit crit, and maybe you don't get your crit effect to go off. If you're a large base ship shooting at another large base ship and you only have 1 crit in your pool, they point defense ion cannon. Maybe it doesn't go off. So it's really important to have 2 crits in your pool, which is why you generally see, like, you can see more crit-based effects if you can actually fix your dice to guarantee that you have those 2 in the pool. So this card, for me, it's a good card. It was much better before current meta stabilized. So I think this is a really solid B card. We just don't see it much in competitive play. I don't think I've seen it at the table on our local games in a long, long time. Have you, Nick?
no, not since the 1.5 change, honestly.
Because I remember I would fly assault concussion missiles with MC-75 Ordnance and just do it twice back when you could do it twice, and it was absolutely devastating.
And that's why they changed
it. Yeah, and now there's another card that is doing kind of the same thing that's much better, and we'll get there.
We'll get there very soon. Yeah, I have this. I'm kind of on the fence with A or B. I would say this is a pretty solid B option for me as well. Because it's exhaustible, that means very rarely you can have it exhausted if somebody is running, is it the MS1 ion cannons? That exhausts, that blue crit that exhausts. It could happen, and if that happens, they spent their 2-point upgrade and nullified your whole plan, basically. So it's exhaustible. You can only do it once. You still, you could get some power out of this with like a Quat Star Destroyer or like Demolisher. Say, it gets its first attack at long range, flies in, gets its second attack. It doesn't really care about the double arc. But yeah, a lot of your black dice ships, MC-75s, MC-30s, they want the double arc. They want to hit twice, and being able to, like, if this is 5 points and you're 1 ordnance slot, that's a lot to ask for what is effectively just 2 extra damage.
Yeah, I can't argue with anything that you guys have said there. I feel like there are better choices, especially for the points.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a decent card. Better against small ships that don't have evades, and there's
Yeah.
not that many of those.
I will say one dream I've always had is running a Quat Star Destroyer with fire control team, heavy ion emplacements, and assault concussion missiles. Because you can activate a blue and black critical at the same time. You can hit 3 shield zones and then do extra damage to the surrounding shield zones. So effectively, you're getting 5 extra damage on your attack.
That, boys and girls, is
That's
what we
definitely a
call a
dream.
gimmick.
It's not good. It's not good. But it would be really funny to watch somebody just say like, "Oh, my full health Venator just went like from full to like wounded, limping away." So, okay, enough about ACMs. Let's go ahead and move on to our other acronym, APTs, Assault Proton Torpedoes. So, Assault Proton Torpedo is very similar. It's an exhaustible black crit effect. Exhaust this card to deal 1 face-up damage card to the defender. 4 points. This came out in Wave 2 on the MC30, I believe. I think this... I'll go ahead and start this time, Reuben. I think this is our A tier upgrade. I would definitely take this over ACMs as much as I like the extra damage. Dealing 1 face-up card to a defender is... it could be anything. It could be 1 extra damage with a structural, but it could be projector missile line. It could be calm noise. There's so many upgrades that you hate seeing, or criticals that you hate seeing. And this works. Yeah, this works even if they have shields left. So, you're fighting a Super Star Destroyer. It's got like 30 shields. You hit it, you get your black crit. Even though you didn't do any hull damage because they brace and they redirect, you still get to deal a face up to them. That can really mess with their plan. So it's really good at destabilizing, specifically a bigger ship, like a large ship or a super.
This is definitely for hunting larger ships, because if we look at the math, advanced concussion missiles say deal basically 2 damage, and when we look at what APTs does, if APTs goes on, the worst possible outcome, like the most likely outcome, is structural damage, which is 2 damage. So we're already on parity card-wise with what these 2 cards do. But APTs could also say, "Oh, you have 6 shields. That's 6 damage. Enjoy."
Yep.
Or, no readying defense tokens, can't spend exhausted defense tokens, reduce your speed. Like, don't click 1, and we all know how good having the additional clicks are.
Nobody likes to lose their navigation.
Yeah, and you can't quantify in pure mathematical damage numbers how much better that is, but everybody's gut will say, "Oh man, those are all pretty good." The same issue that this card has, that had assault concussion missiles had, is evades and point defense ion cannon.
Yep.
So we're still in the same boat where these 2 defense tokens these 2 cards can be mitigated by savvy defense token spins and well-built enemy ships, which is why they're not in S like how they used to be. And because your close range ships want to double arc to apply their damage over 2 turns so that they can hopefully kill something. The exhaust effect means that they're not as powerful as they were.
But it is also 4 points rather than 5, which I know 1 point doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're doing multiple ships, it adds up.
Yeah, it's and to add on your point, Reuben, because it's exhaustible, like, you're also not stressing your opponent's ability to mitigate, right? Like, if they spend an exhaust token or an evade token and they ruin your crit, you can't then try again, right? You don't get that second shot. PDICs doesn't even care. You don't get it on any shot. So it's really hard to really justify with all the ways you can mess with your opponent's dice pools now. I definitely agree that this used to be S tier. You used to see this all the time because it's so good, and you still see it in specific builds, namely with the Patriot's Fist. Clone War ships that you can take swivels turrets and confire, and basically add black dice at long range, and confire an extra black dice, because once you get your one, you can add more. So like, a large ship throwing 2 or 3 black dice at long range all of a sudden has APTs trigger before you even engage. It's devastating, right? But it's like some of the only times you really see this upgrade anymore, because
I've got my fleet built wrong.
And that build exists because the meta has moved around what PDICs has done to close range combat.
Yep.
So we have a question. What card, if any, can ready the exhausted APT?
The Interdictor title, but Interdictors can't take APTs. That's the only thing I can think of that can refresh a card before the status phase. Reuben, you got nothing? I don't think anything can refresh a card outside of status.
Is there anything that does that besides the Interdictor?
I'm trying to think of like unique officers.
I can't think of one. That'd be really cool if there is one.
Maybe that's something that we need in the first upgrade set there.
I wouldn't mind seeing more upgrades that actually interact with the mechanics of the game, because the mechanics have gotten a lot more complex than they originally were. Right? There's a lot more exhausting, a lot more defense token or command token spending than there used to be. So I want to see more cards. Like Raid is a cool mechanic that. Well, that's a whole podcast episode, but
just generic officers that do stuff that based on how the game works now instead of how the game worked 5 years ago.
Yeah, I would love to see like an officer that's like exhaustible, kind of like the Interdictor title, where it's like you exhaust your officer to ready a card, because then maybe cards like APTs, you could spend it and then exhaust your officer to untap it, to refresh it.
It's all right. We all play Magic.
You can spend it on
We're geeks.
We've all played a bit of the old cardboard crap.
Yeah, so that would be an interesting interaction, because now you have an officer that you take on like an MC30 or a Gladiator, because you want to double arc with your ACMs or APTs. But so APTs, I'm definitely feeling A tier. I think it should be one step higher than ACMs just because it's cheaper. The effect is largely greater. Nobody likes drawing a face up. Yes, there are times where you draw like a direct mission line when you already lost all your shields, and you go, cool, free damage.
I don't know. I still, based on all your arguments and everything, I would still leave it in B. I mean, you've got this as B plus, and you've got the last one as B minus.
I think the argument is that even though it's more random, the upside and the unquantifiables of the upside of what the damage cards could do is what puts it in A. Because I know Garrett has had multiple games where he's been APT'd. It's lost in that game when it's gone off.
The way that I am looking at it is not so much what the upside is. It's just that there's the equality and the downside. It has to be exhausted, and there are a lot of defenses against it. The stuff that would be most effective against are the things that would have the best defense tokens against it.
Top of B. We'll see if any cards actually hit A.
Yeah.
It's really interesting now.
That's kind of where I'm at. Like Chris, not to give spoilers or anything, but I don't know that there are other Ordnance upgrades that I would make an A tier if we don't make APT an A tier.
And I mean, there's the thing. You don't necessarily have to have an A tier. I mean, to be perfectly honest, there are going to be some things that just don't fit.
I'm just gonna say I see APTs in some fleets, and I never see ACMs anymore.
I could understand that argument.
That's where it's at for me.
Okay.
Because that same Patriot Fist thing doesn't work as well with ACMs, because splashing somebody's shields at long range gives your opponent time to it's easier for them to repair that extra 2 damage on shields, and it just doesn't hit as hard as getting them that face up that all of a sudden they can't relate to defense tokens or something. So moving on. Next, everybody's favorite, expanded launchers. Now, I'm going to be mean here. This card is 13 points and a modification. The battery armament for your front hull zone is increased by 2 black dice. Now, the picture looks awesome. I love the artwork for this card. It really just makes me feel like I'm taking like more missiles, right? It makes you feel like you have more gun. But for 13 points, you can take like 2 other good upgrades that would effectively do a very similar job. Now, one reason adding 2 black dice to your front hull is awesome. Everybody loves to add more dice. What I don't like about this is that most ships only have 1 ordnance slot. So if you take this to add more black dice, you cannot also take one of these these fun black crit effects. So yes, more damage, like 2 dice could be 4 damage, but it could be 0. And it's likely going to be 2. And these crit effects, like we talked about, on average do 2 damage already. I am saying, like, I don't know. I wouldn't say this is an F tier card.
I would.
But if there's gonna be an F tier, it's gonna be I think expanded launchers.
And I'm gonna tell you exactly why I say this is F tier, because I'm comparing it to other cards that give similar effects. Okay, like your spinal armaments, things like that. Give it in 2 hull zones. It's either your sides or your front and back. This is just the front. It's more expensive, and while it's more dice, it's still it's so focused. Especially if for a newer player, if you haven't really learned to pilot, you don't know how to point your ship in the right direction. I mean, let's be honest. Other people are going to get out of your zone, and you have to be close up. If I'm getting that close, I am not looking for a front shot. I am looking for a broadside.
Chris, you're playing the game wrong.
I always have been.
Always play triangles, Nick.
I don't understand what people like. Everybody has this mentality of like flying and broadsiding and flying away. It's like, no, nose to nose. This is how you play Armada.
What's your advantage there? Okay.
I know. I run a lot. I run a lot of really tanky quads.
Now, see, here's the thing.
Triangle,
I like death triangles. I like death triangles, but I like death triangles from long range.
And that's the funny part.
Yeah, I do. My last few lists I've run are like a Superstar Destroyer and then the quad ISD with the interdictor. Like I like running into my opponent. So that's why I'm hosting this episode.
Triangle go bang. Yeah.
Triangle go.
Get it.
Yep.
It's funny that this card pays such a premium at 13 points when Enhanced Armaments is 10. And Enhanced Armaments has the same topside damage amount that it could do. Mm-hmm. Interesting to think about it in that way. They're both modifications. They both add 2 dice. It's just that the likelihood of the 2 black hit crits is higher than the 1 double on the red dice. But the red dice is going to shoot all game instead of shooting twice. So if we can take this theory crafting another level and say, okay, well, if a good ordnance card is 4 to 5 points, that means that we need to have expanded launchers shoot 13 divided by 4 times to be good, or at least as good as these other cards. And that's like what, 5 times or something?
It's basically impossible unless you have gunnery teams or you're playing advanced gunnery and you're able to get close enough to multiple ships to get your reps in.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a public service announcement. If they have expanded launchers, do not, under any circumstances, pick their advanced gunnery. Don't do that. Don't do that to them. So,
And I will throw one last note out here for one of the things that Nick has said. I think we have at this point proven that my game is F tier. So
yeah, the only defense I will give expanded launchers is I do think it has a pretty interesting place in campaign play, in like, for example, Rebellion of the Rim, because the upgrades kind of can come sparingly, and if you're not taking a lot of squadrons, you end up kind of like not getting the points, so you have extra points floating around. Go ahead and take it if you know you're going to use it, but just don't expect it to, like...
You're not going to use it.
You'll use it
a lot smaller.
Yeah, you use it once or twice.
With expanded, ooh.
Yeah, but that's, like I said, campaign play is a niche thing. Not everybody plays.
The ship that wants to use this will have the hardest time using that, and that is the Victory.
Oh, poor Victory.
Yeah.
You can fit it. You can take a quad or an MC-75 in campaign.
Try it on the Venator, Imperial Venator 2. It's got double ords.
That is that's also one of the exceptions. This is why I say I could see this as being D tier, because I do think you can have builds where this works. The Venator having the double ordnance gives you some fun options, because you can take expanded launchers, and you could take something like ACMs or APTs, or you could also take external racks for even more dice adding.
Or you can take something good.
But it comes down to the math, and the math says that this card is probably about 5 points too expensive.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even Spinals is 9 points, and Spinals gives you one die at long range, which means you get to shoot every turn with it. So you're going to get more shots out with Spinal. You're going to do more damage with one red from Spinals than you are with a 2 black from expanded launchers over the course of a game.
And that's just that.
Yeah.
F tier.
I'm glad to get that off the screen.
Buy expanded launchers. I love your artwork. Okay, so let's move on. Let's get to a personal favorite: external racks. Now,
F. To the moon.
You say F.
F.
This is our
go.
This is our S tier ordnance upgrade. You see this card on every ship that has an ordnance slot all the time. It is discarded, so you only get it once a game, but that doesn't hold people back from taking this over every other card we've talked about and the other ones we're going to talk about. You take external racks because it's only 4 points. It adds 2 dice to your pool, and you're likely only to get 1 or 2 shots with your ordnance, right? Like we've been talking about, black dice ships have trouble getting in and getting their shots consistently. So hey, go ahead and add it. Another thing to think about, while attacking at close range, that also applies to squadrons and flakking. All of the upgrades we've talked about so far don't apply to squadrons. So this is an upgrade that you can spend on any ship. You can have a hammerhead that never gets in range, but hey, guess what? I got 1 turn I can flak. Here's 2 extra black dice. It's always good.
I think this is Jeff on the chat, and he's saying S tier. I am going to make the argument. I put it A. I really do. I think the discard at 4 points makes it A.
A? Oh, Chris,
I know everybody takes it. Hey.
Chris, I'll remove other upgrades to put this on my ship. I'm just saying, that makes it S tier for me.
And I'm just saying, I've broadsided with a torpedo with Akbar.
And I felt the pain.
H9s and extracts and
I mean, there's okay. So there goes the other piece to that, though, is that on ships where you get to add dice that already exist in your dice pool, yes, it's great. Mm-hmm. But it's one time. And I mean, you get that. Hey, I do know the right shot in any given game can just close the game right right from that one shot. I do recognize that. But so do the people who are playing against you. Okay? And they can do a lot. A good pilot can do well to get away with that. But Chris, only 4 points, and how many close shots do you get? I am not arguing with that.
Yeah.
I high A, but I'm still saying A. That's me.
I'm going to make an argument here for context. Every ship with an ordnance upgrade will take the weapons team ordnance experts.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to be playing a list that involves throwing black dice, the rest of your list is going to be built around getting you to throw that attack, right? Like what I've so fondly referred to as my shenanigans list.
Yeah.
The interdictor and the ISD, the quad, everything. I have all these speed shenanigans to slow you down and prevent you from escaping. And that's to guarantee that when I get to close range, you can't get away from me before I can kill you. And if you run black dice ships, you run like, Demolisher can shoot after moving. You take engine decks on it. It allows you to basically double your threat range, so nobody can get away from Demolisher going speed 3. MC30s go speed 4, so they're really hard to get away from. So all the ships that you want to throw black dice with will take an upgrade like this because they usually don't have any trouble finding their target. Now that comes down to player skill. That comes down to, again, list synergy, and that's where this, like I said, comparisons get hard because you're looking in a vacuum on paper about something that, like, you sit down. How many games do we all play with a competitive list before we tune it down to where we're happy with it? So there's a lot of math and a lot of factors that go into that. That being said, adding 2 black dice to a pool where you have your rerolls, you don't necessarily need the crit effects like APTs or ACMs, because if you don't have them, then your opponent, other than just cutting your damage, isn't costing you anything by making you reroll those crits. That also being said, throwing 2 more black dice with those 2 extra rerolls means that you're likely to get a crit, and you can still do your standard crit, which is going to be a face-up anyway, which is what APTs would be giving you. You're more likely to get a black crit actually go through when you have external racks. You can take it on small ships, you can take it on big ships, you can take it on just anything that has the means to deliver the payload. I don't know. I hear you, Chris. It's not a perfect card, but it used to be cheaper. This used to be 3 points when it came out. They raised it to 4 in the 1.5.
Allow me my controversy.
Yeah. So I'm going to make the argument that on their own, Ordnance upgrades are the weakest upgrade card.
I could see that, yeah.
They're absolutely reliant on other cards to be good. Other officers to be good, other weapons teams to be good. But when you iterate those bonuses together, they become very strong.
Yeah.
By themselves, they're not very good. But the best card of them, and the card that you see, if you see it competitively, it is this card.
Gotcha.
Because of what it does. Because it is, when you layer other upgrades on Ordnance cards, this one is by far the best one.
Okay.
Even though it only happens once, because you only shoot once or twice. It's going to do its job. It pays for its 4 points. It does a bunch of damage. It's very reliable. It doesn't get countered like assault concussion missiles and APTs do. It just adds to the pool. And we all know that, like, free adding dice and then putting rerolls on them or price on them, very good. And this card is what allows, when you have the 2 Ordnance slot ships, to be very powerful. Because you go, okay, add 2 blacks. That's like the crux of it. Because when you add 2 blacks, and you have APTs, and you have price on that quant, that's when that quant just demolishes stuff.
Yeah. Another context is this also gets you around thermal shields.
Okay.
Because whenever you're throwing black dice, you're throwing your entire dice pool. A ship that has if you're attacking somebody with thermals, they can remove basically all your black dice because they say, oh, like your Kawat ISE stone, 3 reds, 2 blue, 3 black. I'm going to remove all your black dice, and you don't get any black crit effects. This allows you to still get some black dice in with your Ordnance experts or the Avenger that has double Ords. That's just another thing to think about.
And Jeff has said this card is great on the CIS Providence. So
it's great on every ordnance. Like if you have 1 ordnance slot, you put this on it. If you have 2 ordnance slots, you put this and APTs on it.
All right. Well, let's move on now.
I'm just regardless,
it's
Chris.
At least the top of A.
This is the Nothing beats Extra X. Okay, so let's move on. Flechette torpedoes or Flechette torpedoes. So 3 points. It's one of the cheaper ones. While attacking a squadron, you may spend 1 black die with a crit icon to toggle its activation slider to its activated side. What's to say about it? For me, I put this in D tier. I put this in D tier, and hear me out on it. It can be kind of cool if you have 2 ordnance slot. You could put this on a vendor and take like your extract, take something else. This helps you deal with like scatter aces because you spend the crit before they scatter your attack. So if you roll your black flak and you have Agent Callus or something, a way to add more dice to your flacking, it lets you spend it. It can also allow you to activate an entire hull zone worth of squadrons if you have everything in range. Because it's just while attacking, so it's not just like 1 squadron. You can every squadron, if you have black flak dice and you have Ordnance experts, you can fish those crits and you can activate like an entire bomber wing. It's pretty cool. You don't see it taken because again, it competes with some pretty heavy hitting stuff. And this upgrade is completely useless against somebody who's running light squadrons or no squadrons.
There's a different Ordnance upgrade that supports your fighter ball way better than this one does. And we'll get to it.
And I have that higher than this one.
Like, this card says, oh, well, that black flak die you rolled, it's just never going to do damage, and I'll maybe activate a squadron. Or I'll do 1 damage.
Yeah, the comment from Jeff here, it sucks you have to spend the entire die and not just the crit on a hit crit roll.
Yeah, it can be cool on a what is the Venator, the Imperial Venator flak? Is it blue black?
I don't know. I don't fly the triangle.
It's blue black.
Blue-black.
So you could have it with Callus where you get to add in an extra black die. So you have good chances. I'm not saying it's like I put it in D tier, so I'm not saying it's good.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's better than F tier.
I don't know. The only reason I would go D is because it's only 3 points.
Yeah.
And it doesn't exhaust.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I think I would side with Nick for the D tier there.
Y'all are generous.
Oh, am I?
If I was playing a ship that had 2 ordnance slots on it, if I was playing in a squad heavy meta, this wouldn't be a terrible thing to put as your second ordnance slot on a ship. Also, in combination with the next upgrade we're going to talk about, it would also apply. And again, I'm telling you, if you're first player and you broadside an entire wing of squadrons and you activate every single one of them against a 134 list, what are they doing now?
All right, so what is the next one?
Every 8 on average.
You have Ordnance experts. You have Agent Cal. I mean, I know. You actually, if with Ordnance pods, it might be.
Callus, those don't count. Those are other cards.
Okay, so we've got Ordnance pods here.
I'm saying context. Okay, moving on. We're going to move on to Ordnance pods, since now it's in the conversation. So Ordnance pods
is the good one.
is the better version. Medium or large ship only. At the end of your attack step, you can exhaust this card and choose 1 hull zone. then you perform an attack from that hull zone with an anti-squad value of 1 black die, even if you've already attacked from that hull zone this round. So this is also 3 points. If everything I just said for Fletchette torpedoes is just better for Ordnance pods. It's just a better version of that. Yep. Because it doesn't have to activate. You don't have to spend the die against those scatter aces that are going to scatter your damage anyway. It lets you flak them twice, so you can make them burn their tokens, or just make some damage stick.
I like free shots.
LTT one target, you LTTs one squadron, and then you Ord pods all the other ones.
Yes. Yep. And Agent Cal supplies as well.
Card in competitive lists. It's good on Vendor 2s.
Yes. Also, it triggers Ruthless Strategist a second time.
Ooh.
Yeah. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
I like it.
This is what I'm thinking as a good C tier.
I think this is a good C tier card.
Because it sits right in the middle. It's cheap. It's not really. It's competing with other better upgrades, but for example, on the double ordnance ships, I would take it as a second one if I was playing in a squadron heavy meta. You're not playing against a lot of squadrons. It might be better to take extracts and APTs or something like that. But if you're playing against a lot of 134, you take this because you can combine it, like I said, with Ruthless Strategist and take your own I'm going to say, again, I speak Imperial, so I'm going to say you take your own fire sprays or decimators to just flak their hull and just ruin somebody's day. Yep. So
put it on. Jeff is saying put it on impetuous. I'm sorry.
Impetuous. Does that work? Impetuous lets you do the 2. I haven't seen that card in a while. At the end of your attack step, you choose one of your hull zones. You perform an attack against one enemy squadron from that hull if you have already attacked, even if you already attacked. So with you cannot do that because Impetuous is a Raider title and Ordnance Pods is a medium or large only.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that would be really cool.
I would actually go B with this, but that's just. I can see the argument. No, I can see the argument for C just because.
It's only usable
against squadrons. Yeah, that's the argument there.
And it's also a medium or large only.
Yeah,
it doesn't take your attack because it's an additional attack, but again,
it's if this card lets you reroll 1 black dice and then did this effect like LTTs lets you reroll 1 red and then do the LTT.
That would make this card.
And then you could put 2 or
if not a B, this would be
more cards on it.
Yeah.
This would be almost an A tier.
6 points, and it's a black LTTs. That'd be cool. That's a cool design.
Pretty cool. Yeah, that's something to think about.
So we got 2 left, right?
Write that down.
We got 2 left, and we're out of time. So let's get through these. Okay. So rapid reload. This is another modification. We're sitting at 8 points for this one. The battery armaments from your left and right hull zones are increased by 1 black die. I don't like this card. You can compare this to Enhanced Armaments, but Enhanced Armaments is a much better card because it lets you shoot out of both sides at long range instead of at close range. In order for Rapid Reload to really get its points worth, you have to be making consistent attacks out of both your left and right at the same time at close range. I don't know. I mean, Gladiators and MC30s, they can do it, but
if your opponent lets you do that, it's their fault.
So this does eat up your modification slot. It is 8 points, which is twice as many points as external racks or APTs. It is cheaper than expanded launchers, but that's again, that expanded launchers is the most expensive upgrade in the game. So, it's all up from there.
Yeah, I'm just going to throw this out there and just, based on the way the game is played and how many shots you're going to get from Ordnance, I just don't think that any modification is good in Ordnance.
No, yeah. Honestly, I would love to see a design move towards every ship has, and I'm just going to say this, I already in my head know that there would be balance issues and up combos that would be outrageous, but like we should just take modifications out of a slot and just have every ship has a modification slot. So you can just take a modification as a like almost like your commander doesn't have a slot per se.
Yeah.
You know, every ship gets one modification, and then you can take your upgrades. Because the limitation of modification is not really that like it doesn't come up enough. Except when I was like running the super and I had like 20 upgrades to pick from, where I was fighting, going like, which of these modifications do I want more? So like the limitation is not that present in the game, but when it pops up, you can tell like the points are kind of like overcompensated for like this is a modification. It's extra points. It's adding dice to your pool. I'm like, yeah. So are a lot of other upgrades. So are a lot of other game effects. I think it would be cooler to have like this is my ship's modification that makes it unique, right? Anyway, I don't
think the design team found their footing with the Ordnance upgrades outside of APTs and assault concussion missiles until Extracts really came out.
Yeah,
well, you've seen them take a lot of more experimental approaches to what Ordnance means in the game. Kind of like how offensive retrofits kind of have some interesting places where they went design-wise with them. So like, and a lot of them were misses, unfortunately, for the slot, because like as it stands right now, there's only maybe 4 that you're really gonna see, and the design space that the other ones are in is just too inefficient for the physical act of flying the game, like playing the game.
Yeah.
You're not going to ever be in a position where you're going to shoot that many times at close range, either out of your front or out of either side. Like the game doesn't function in a manner because it's more of a skirmish game instead of like a really big fleet engagement game, that you're going to see game states come up where these cards have a really like effective turns to them. So,
see, I'm gonna.
The designers were scared by what the potential could be with how many points you pay for it. It just never actually turned out to be that way.
I'm gonna throw out a reference that some people, in fact, you guys may not get. There was a game called Starfleet Battles. Okay, and it was kind of like Armada, except with Star Trek. It was actually a lot more complicated, a lot of paperwork involved in it. Anyway, the reason why I bring this up is the one thing that I think would make Ordnance really, really work well is if you had an ability that was in that game, which led to a tactic called the Gorn Anchor. Okay? And what the Gorn Anchor was, you would put power into tractor beams, and essentially when you got close to a ship, you would lock that ship in and hinder its movement while you had overloaded all these weapons, these close range weapons, and then just unload when they can't get away. And there's nothing similar to that. I mean, you know, the one ship that might be able to do it does not have ordnance slots. So,
yeah,
that's similar. That's the entire premise of my shenanigans fleet.
Yeah,
is to use multiple ships and upgrades to mimic that effect.
Yeah,
and I think the design team, if you take a step back and look at Armada holistically, they were very, very hesitant to do anything that could be a negative play experience with the command tile.
Yeah. All right, so we got...
Pylons is kind of weak. Raids, a little weak, right? But like if those things iterate together, they get very strong to the point where you can't really, like, you don't feel like you have a meaningful choice in the game. And the designers seem to want to stay fairly conservative with those elements of the game.
Yeah, that's why Admiral Constantine is so bad, because like they wanted to introduce this like speed mechanic, but they didn't want to make it too powerful because you're interacting with your opponent's ability to play the game, and so they made it kind of limp, and so Constantine just doesn't see play because he's not good, because he doesn't do anything meaningful.
Yeah.
Because if he were, your opponent would not be having a good time.
All right, so last up we have Wide Area Barrage.
We need a sign rapid reload. I'm thinking I'm fine
Get down
with
there
F.
and dumpster.
I was going to give it a D, benefit of the doubt, because it's not 13 points.
Yeah, I kind of lean into no, F. I'm sorry. I wanted to.
We're making a pyramid here, guys. Come on, it's an F.
It's an F. Okay, so last one, Wide Area Barrage. This is a really cool upgrade. 2 points. Black crit effect. If the defender is a ship, choose one other ship or squadron at close range of the defender. That ship or squadron suffers damage equal to half of the total number of black hit icons in your attack pool rounded up. So,
Jeff's well, it's only 2 points.
only 2 points. It's a lot of words. Basically, you attack somebody. If you roll a crit, you can then, during the resolve damage step, choose another ship or squadron. This can be a scatter ace because they don't get defense tokens against this. You then count up your black hits and your doubles because they are still hits. You put all your hits, cut it in half, round up, deal straight damage. It's pretty cool. To a ship, your opponent gets to choose which hull zone that's applied to. So it's always going to be in whichever is the least meaningful hull zone. But still, black dice, you can pretty easily get 4 or 5 hits. If again, the case I'm gonna make here is that this is the second black upgrade you take, in addition to extracts. You throw your black dice, you reroll with Ordnance experts. You might get 4 or 5 hits. You're going to do 2 or 3 damage to a squadron. It's cool. I wish it affected all squadrons, but that would be way too good. So hitting one squadron.
Player.
Yeah, hitting one squadron for 2 damage is pretty cool. It does it's not exhaustible, so it triggers on a double arc. So again, that's a Providence or something, or an MC-75. But when you're double arcing, you don't have as many black dice in one pool, so you're kind of hitting them for 1, hitting them for 2, instead of just a quad ISD that's throwing 4 or 3 black dice with a confire. Is going to do maybe 4 damage. It's okay. It's 2 points, so it's an easy add-on for your double ordnance ships, your vendors, because you can just say, I'm going to hit you really hard. I've got all of the tech to reroll my dice, to add dice, hit you hard, and then I'm going to hit another ship. And if you have 2 ships with this upgrade, you can do 4 or 5 damage to another ship without even shooting it directly.
So it's distance 1?
It's close range.
Close?
Yeah.
Yep.
So another ship or squadron at close?
Yep. Which is a pretty good bubble.
That's pretty big. And it's black hits or crits in the pool?
And I mean,
it's
here's my thought process on this, is that a lot of people keep flotillas pretty close to hiding behind other ships, and that keeps them from using their scatter as well.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's apply. Read the damage. How is the damage work?
That ship or squadron suffers damage equal to half the total number of black hit icons in your attack pool rounded up.
Yep.
Okay. So you pick an arc, and it is assigned that many damage, correct?
Correct.
It works this way. It's not the instances of 1.
No, that's the one. That is that one upgrade. It specifically says that.
And debris field and stuff. Well, debris fields don't work.
If you, if you blast a super Star Destroyer with this, you can choose that flotilla that's all the way at the back, of the ship, and say you're running a Venator with extracts and wide area barrage, and you're blasting it on a double arc. You might maybe not kill that flotilla, but you might kill that flotilla.
We're putting this card in the friend zone.
I think this is.
I'm gonna make a tier for this card, and it's the maybe tier.
Yeah,
I am actually willing to give it an A tier.
I see this,
especially at 2 points.
I have this as a C tier because I still would rather have other upgrades. For me, it would be: do I take wide air barrage or do I take ordnance pods? This isn't really getting into the fight where I'm like, am I taking APTs or ACMs?
Well, I'm gonna throw this out in a manner that relates to the way that I play, and you're thinking about this with swivel mounts and not doing this at close range. You're shooting at long range. This makes more sense to me than external racks.
Yeah.
With the style of play that I like, but I see the argument where external racks is better than this. I will not deny that. If that is your style of game, by all means. But if you're built to add black dice in a role that is not designed to have black dice, this is good.
The only thing, and again, this is kind of what I want to bring up the context of, this allows your opponent to negate it, right? Your opponent just has to say, oh, you have wide area barrage on like 1 or 2 of your ships. I'm just not going to be at close range of myself with anything.
I can see that.
Then it doesn't do anything.
But then at 2 points, what have I lost?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty cheap.
It's more the opportunity cost at that point.
Yeah.
And most.
And let me also throw this counterpoint to your argument about, I'm just not going to have the ship that close. Now you're forcing your opponent to fly in a way that you want them to fly.
Yeah.
Sure. But
I don't see many carriers with boosted anymore. Most people are running expanded instead now.
Yeah.
So specifically in this current squad war era of the game where it's all about flight controllers and boosted, I mean, maybe, but the big thing holding it back is that there's like 3 ships that have double ordnance on them or something. Like
there's not many.
Very small.
Yeah.
And the number of those ships that are double ordnance ships that support 134 play is really like one of them. Like the Imperial Venator.
Yeah.
The only one I can really think of. But like this card seems interesting. It's just there's too much opportunity cost from more powerful, like obvious cards that work in a predictable way that you don't really have to think about and you don't have to read 15 times. That just do. So if you're into more of that like Timmy kind of Armada play, to an extent, see where you can put this card with some other combo pieces.
I mean, this is filling me with the urge to really tweak the my separatist fleet. It really is. I'm kind of curious to see how it would work.
Because I could, like, the minute you hit some sort of formation flying Akbar guy, and you go, oh, free damage, I'll put it on, like, there goes 2 shields. Or you shoot at their large base, and you go, oh, hey, you're Vader ace? Take 2, bucko.
Yeah.
Don't shoot me. It's interesting. I'm a player that does math and goes raw damage, so I would probably not really ever play this card. But like I can see what it's doing, and I find what it's doing mathematically interesting.
Yeah. And just the last little bit of note on this, even if you only do 1 damage, it rounds up to 1 damage.
Yeah.
So at the very least, if you're getting a black crit, you're at least doing 1 damage to something else. It has limited use, I think. It has a competitive slot. It's only 2 points. I'm thinking this is a pretty solid C tier card for me personally.
All right.
I could be convinced this could be B, but I just don't think it's competitive enough. It doesn't add enough, I think.
I think if it were B, we'd have seen it in one of the more experimental players' fleets yet.
Sure.
We've had a lot of time with the game.
All right. Well, with that, we have run a little bit over, but not horribly so, and This is part of the reason why we've started doing the show at an earlier time. So I want to thank you guys for joining me, and thank you for putting up with my ignorance on Ordnance. But
toward enemy, fly at them.
Yeah.
Fly full speed, ram, and deliver the payload.
The classic.
Right. Okay. Well, with that, I'm going to say good night to you guys. Thank you again for being on the show, and hopefully in a couple of weeks we will actually be able to go ahead and talk about our new rule set.
Oh man, I want some fresh Armada. Right. It's been kind of the same stuff for a long time for me and my faction, and I really want some new stuff to play with.
All right. Well, good night, guys, and I will see you on Thursday. So, I want to thank you guys for watching the show tonight. I appreciate your patience during this awkward time for the channel. It's one of those things to where we are trying to get things under control, but scheduling has been an issue, and I know it's going to continue to be an issue moving into the holidays. Hopefully once January rolls around, we'll have a lot clearer calendar and things won't be so awkward. But I'm going to get you as much as I can. So with that being said, Thursday night, we are going to be doing Thursday Night Armada. You will have the live stream on that. Tomorrow, I am hoping to have this up on YouTube on Tuesday, and we're also hoping to have the previous Thursday Night Armada that I had not yet edited up and ready to go. We will also... let's see, what do we got going on? Sunday, I believe Mallet has said that he is unavailable for the Swoder stream. If that is the case, I'm still going to go on and I will do some solo stuff on that. So hopefully some of you guys will join me in the chat and we can talk about what's going on there. And then next Monday, I am uncertain on whether or not we're going to have Outlaws. A lot of that's going to have to do with where my construction work is on my house at the moment. So hopefully everything goes smoothly and we'll get you all the good stuff that you want to see. If not, just like I said, stay tuned on Discord or on Facebook, and I will keep you up to date on what's going on. So with that, I will say thank you for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful week.